Welcome back to the Investor Professor Podcast. This is Dr. Ryan Peckham, and this is episode 138. On today's episode, we're going to check back in with NVIDIA and see what happened to the stock pre-split. The split actually happens tomorrow. You'll see it start trading that way in the morning. And we're also going to discuss the benefits of progress over perfection when it comes to our goals, our habits, all of the above. That will be what we discuss today. So, as always, get your mind right and let's get to work. Well, as always, welcome back to the show, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This week, we discuss, I guess let's start with NVIDIA. That has definitely been the shining star of the market. So a couple of weeks ago, I discussed the NVIDIA split. And since that time, so the split is actually happening. It's going to happen tomorrow. The stock is almost up $200 since we discussed it here on the show. So on Friday, the stock closed at $1,208, $1,208. And so tomorrow, it'll start trading around $120.88. So one of the things I want to discuss is just how meteoric that rise was into the split. And it might actually continue a little bit. But you're definitely going to want to be a little cautious if you are to buy into this. It's so interesting. We did a video, or in the last the last podcast we did. I didn't know quite the dates. It's funny, like I said, the 6th or the 7th or whatever Friday was going to be, and I was just kind of doing it off of memory. And then our people at Reaching Dreams cut that and made an Instagram reel on it, which has been seen like 170,000 times, which is a little baffling. And it's so funny, like people just can't help but want to correct you on the date. And I'm like, maybe I should just like give wrong financial figures just so it creates more engagement and people just want to correct me. I don't know why. We feel fantastic when we get to correct people. So funny. But yes, so NVIDIA went way up. I mean, it's crazy. Year to date, like just to give you an example here, year to date, NVIDIA, this is after split numbers, okay? So I'm going to start giving you after split numbers because on Yahoo Finance, it's actually the chart is showing after split, even though the number on the screen is still pre-split. But if you just look year to date, NVIDIA has gone from $48 to $120. So still just an amazing return. It looks absolutely insane. But, I mean, this is a stock that people want to be in. NVIDIA just crossed this past week. It settled below it, but for an instant, it went above $3 trillion. There's only been $3 trillion companies in the history of the stock market. They are now Microsoft, Apple, and NVIDIA. And for a little bit, NVIDIA actually traded at a valuation that was above Apple, and it might still be there. Let's see. No, it's not. It's not bigger than Apple right now. It was for a little bit. But here's the daunting fact of the $3 trillion club: Apple, NVIDIA, and Microsoft. So the crazy stat is that if you add those three stocks together, those three together are 20% of the S&P 500. So just a quick reminder, the S&P 500 is the 500 most profitable firms out there, and three of them are now 20% of that index, which is really mind-boggling when you think about it. So if you had to ask me, what do I hope happens to NVIDIA now that it has split? This is probably a response you don't really want to hear, but I hope that it actually trades sideways for a little bit. Like it has had such a gain that you really just want it to kind of digest those gains, to kind of trade sideways a little bit. I mean, going up every day is great, but it's really something that you can't. That's not something that you're going to be able to sustain. So I expect that there will be some more movement up with the number of people, just kind of the original thesis that we talked about. Now that it's less expensive, there'll be more people who will buy into it, which I think is fantastic. But it's one of those things. It's gone up so much that when you really think about it, if you buy into it at this level, you have to leave yourself some room to be able to buy some more if it goes down. So I do think the thesis of NVIDIA is intact. I do think that it's going to continue to do well. But also, if it's part of your plan, because it has run up so much from the last time that we discussed it, you got to leave yourself some room that if it were to go down, that you're going to be willing to buy some more. So that's kind of the case there. I mean, it's been just pretty tremendous to see this. I'm not sure, especially with a company this large, that I've ever seen anything like this before, of just a company completely just being like a rocket ship taking off, especially just such a legit company. I mean, you do have it we can talk about Roaring Kitty and GameStop and all that kind of stuff. Him jumping on a live stream for the first time in 3 years the other day, and GameStop pretty much going down that entire time. It was interesting to see. I'm not to critique anybody, but I was always, he made so much money in GameStop, and who am I to have any kind of critique? But I would think after like 3 to 4 years, I think many people were expecting that on that call, that YouTube live stream that he did, that he was going to bring up another company, and he didn't. And so, you would think that after that long, you'd find something to go over, a new company. But NVIDIA, I mean, all signs point to it doing well. I mean, here we are almost halfway through the year. All the indexes are looking good. So your portfolio should be looking good. If you haven't started your portfolio again, it's always a good day to start your portfolio. I will say the one thing I did find interesting with the Roaring Kitty, and I watched a little bit of it, was in the beginning they had the huge disclosure, right? So I always say this is for entertainment purposes only. Talk to your financial advisor. This is just an opinion. And it was interesting to see like him doing that as well. I mean, it's hard giving financial advice. I mean, you try to put good content out there, and still you get the comments you get back are always kind of interesting sometimes. And I have definitely started to learn that with the amount of engagement and the increased of engagement we've had on our Instagram page and all of those things where, the things that people are calling you out on is always interesting. Everybody is always willing to give their opinion. So, but the market looks pretty good, and again, I talked about NVIDIA trading sideways, and part of that is it's the summer months. I mean, normally June is not known for a month of a lot of activity. People go on vacation. You just have people out, and so people aren't normally paying attention. So normally we're kind of in no man's land until about, after July 4th, especially, or kind of like late July when companies start reporting earnings again. So normally you see lower volume in the month of June, and stocks kind of just float around. Normally there's just not a whole lot of news stories. So we'll start hearing more about political stuff and all of those things going on, and we'll see kind of where that leads. And speaking of that, this week we have the CPI number for the Fed. We'll see that. Apple's going to have their developers conference. There's a lot of expectations with that. Apple has had a nice comeback here. There's going to be an expectation that they're redoing some things, and the market will be looking for what's their AI strategy going to be. So, we'll see how some of those news stories develop, see what goes on there. But again, you kind of look here, and everything's looking pretty good. I mean, not a whole lot to report, business as usual, so to speak. So the one thing I wanted to discuss today was talking about how progress is better than perfection. And I bring this up because I've had a lot of conversations over the last month or so, students that are graduating, whether it be clients, whether it's just friends, and everybody has something that they want to start, whether it's a investment portfolio, whether it's a workout routine, whether it's a class they want to take, a degree they want to do, kind of this ecosystem that I'm involved in. And my one main piece of advice for people is that you need to look for progress over perfection. And so many times we think, okay, this has to be perfect before I do this. I have to have this settled before I take this step. And there's a lot of us who we don't do a goal, we don't start a business, we don't change jobs, we don't invest, we don't, we're always waiting for something to happen. But the problem with that is that there's always going to be something that you should wait for. I'm going to wait until I get the election results. I'm going to wait until whatever. And there's people that I know that put their money into cash during 2022 when the market wasn't doing well. And those portfolios are still in cash, and they still, now they're waiting for the next market pullback to put that money in. And that guessing game can cost you so much money. There's an old saying that says more people have lost money waiting for the next recession than money that has been lost in a recession. And that's basically a great point to make, that the thing about a recession in the stock market, or when stock market values drop, is you can measure how much money you lost, right? It's easy to measure. If a stock goes from $100 to $80, you know exactly how much money you lost. But one of the more difficult things is what about the choices that you've made, or the non-choice that you've made, the errors of omission, right? Where those are harder to measure. The decision that you didn't make, right? The decision not to invest. It's like, those are much harder for you to measure. So it's easy to say, I shouldn't have bought a stock when it went from $100 to $80, but it's much harder to measure if you're like, well, I could have been investing for the last 3 years and I didn't. That's an arbitrary number that it's really hard for you to really know how much you would have made, or if you would have changed jobs, or if you would have started that business, or if you would have started that workout routine, whatever it is. Right? Because we talk about investing in yourself mentally, physically, financially. There's a reason we say that on this show. And the reason for that is that good habits can stack on top of each other, right? So if you walk around the block every day, but you're also listening to a book while you do it, or you're listening to books or educational materials in a car, right? Automobile University. If you're not spending money on something that you feel is wasteful, and instead you're investing in a particular stock every single week, right? These habits are stackable, they're usable, and it's the progress that you make on that day-to-day basis that is stacked up over a month, a year, a quarter, whatever it is. And so as you go through June, right, the 6th month of the year, think back to, what have you accomplished over the past year, over the past couple months? Not over the past year, but just this year alone. Think back to what your goals were in January, and kind of just, with the reduction in activity that June usually provides for most people, and just kind of take an assessment of where you're at in the middle of the year, and think if there's some things that you haven't done yet, that you haven't made any progress towards. Ask yourself, why haven't you done that? Is it because you're waiting for things to be perfect? Are you waiting for the perfect moment? And at the end of the day, you just got to get started with where you are. You're making the best decision with the information that you have with where you're at. And for those of you who know me personally, I am notorious for basically making a decision quickly and trying to figure it out as we go, right? This is the building the airplane as you are falling towards the ground. I mean, I say yes to a lot of things I do, which I'm trying to get better at, but I do a lot of things based on, all right, I'm going to do that and it'll get better. The podcast is one of those. The podcast was literally like, okay, I was thinking about it, and it's like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it. Here we are 138 episodes later. I've told y'all this many times, but one of the main episodes that is still listened to, which is just horrendous, is the first episode. That's like one of the first ones that people listen to, which is probably why they don't come back maybe. But again, you just have to have a little bit of progress. You got to be able to put one foot in front of the other, and you got to be able to say, okay, this might not be perfect, but I don't need perfection. I don't need perfection. I need progress, right? So the same thing happens with your investment portfolio. It's easy to have hindsight bias, look back, what should I have done? But again, you got to start with where you're at, and you got to put one foot in front of the other, and you got to start making some progress. And so, no, you're not going to get everything right. Not everything's going to work out the exact way you thought it was going to, but you're going to have some things that are going to end up better than you might have thought they would be, right? So just doing small, sizable bites that you can really measure. You can't always determine what the outcome's going to be, but you control the activity. You control your activity. You control your ability to work out or walk around the block or what you eat. You also control how much you save, the things that you sign up for. I mean, like, you control those things, right? So you might not be able to control the result, but you can control the activity. So look and see, what am I doing on a daily basis? What are the things that are helping me? What are the things that might be hindering me, right? And it's not one of those things. Like, I struggle with this too. I always think about how I can be more disciplined. This year, one of my podcast goals was to do 52 episodes, right? One a week. I'm already behind. I mean, life gets busy, things get in the way. And so, not everything is going to be maybe what you set out to be, but sometimes that's okay. You got to be okay. You got to let some of those things go, and you got to be able to say, okay, this was actually, you got to be okay with having a little bit of progress. So again, progress over perfection. And if you do those things, I think you'll look back, especially over a year period, a 5-year period, a 10-year period, and you will be happy with the results. And I know these are some of the things I've said before, but I think it's always good to revisit them. Again, we overestimate what we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And so look back, look at what your 10-year goals are, look at those things, and just take a moment and just kind of self-assess where are we at 6 months into the year. Are you where you want to be? Are you ahead of schedule? Are you behind schedule? What are the things that you're not doing that you think you could get there? And then this week, put some of those things in there, some actionable items that will help you create a little bit of progress. So sometimes, including myself, especially myself, sometimes you might think that I'm talking to you, but sometimes I'm talking to me when I say these things, reminding myself of these things. So again, I do want to say one more thing that I was going to say in the beginning about NVIDIA and NVIDIA's rise and AI's rise and all of these things. The last episode we did, I talked about all the other stocks that are kind of out there, and you can and encourage you to do your own research, but go look at the other companies, because NVIDIA has run up so much into the split. Go look at some of the other companies that are going to benefit from this, that are going to do well, that haven't run up, right? So you might be able to invest in a lot of the AI stuff that's going on, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be invested in NVIDIA until maybe NVIDIA pulls back a little bit, and then you can start your position. So, or you can start a small position, and then if it pulls back again, like I said just a little while ago, be willing to add to it, right? And slowly add to it over time. And you have to do that sometimes with some of the companies as they are going. I mean, we've talked about that with Amazon. We've talked about that with Apple. We've talked about that with some of the boring stocks that we discussed. I mean, again, there's not that many good companies out there. There's a lot of companies out there, but there's not that many good companies out there. So we want to find the good companies, and when they give us an opportunity to get in, and we're kind of on that, we're riding that wave of the technological change. Hopefully, long term, that will be a good deal for us. So that's it for this week. So just to reiterate, progress over perfection. Little decisions, stackable goals. Good decisions added up over time is going to help you get to where you want to be. Don't wait for things to be perfect. because they're never going to be perfect. I'm waiting for this to start my portfolio. I'm waiting for this to buy a house. I'm waiting for this. Like, you have to be, if it's in the right space, right time, and you can make that decision, then you need to go ahead and make that decision and move forward. That's just the way it works. Time just keeps moving, right? So it's like, time keeps moving. So you have to be able to make decisions when they're available to you, and you feel like you're making an educated decision, and it's not something that's rash or rushed. And so you have to be willing to take that chance. So if you haven't started your investment journey, I encourage you have to start investing for your future. Even if you're just doing the S&P 500, do an ETF, the SPY. It's a great place to start. So think about that. Think about, the little things that you can do. Progress over perfection. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And I will see you next time. Have a great week, everybody. I almost forgot. How I end the show. And I always say the same thing, right? Don't mistake activity for achievement. All right, now have a great week. Thanks, everybody.